Hello and welcome to Unit 11, Day 3. Today we're going to be talking about frequency histograms and cumulative frequency histograms. So this is one of our options. We've already done box and whiskers, we've done dot plots. Today we are going to be organizing them into certain types of tables. Now they are not bar graphs. The difference between a bar graph and a histogram is that in a histogram they are spanning over a set of intervals, so the bars should be touching. So a frequency histogram is like a bar graph where each interval in a frequency table is represented by the width of the bar. A cumulative frequency histogram means as you go through the intervals, it accumulates, so it will grow. It'll almost look like a step, like a set of stairs or something when you're done. When data is given in organized tables, the mode is going to be the one that contains the highest frequency. And the easiest way to find the median when we are given these is to basically take however many data values there are, add 1 to it, divide it by 2, and that should help you figure out the middle data value. So in this case, if there are 20 students, obviously half of that is 10. So 10 would, the 10th student score would be our median. If there's an odd number, that's when you have to add 1 and divide by 2. Okay, so what I would like you guys to do is I'll start this off and then I'm going to pause and I would like you guys to finish filling it out. So a score of 85, I'm going to make a little tally mark. 85 would fit in this interval, so I'm going to make a tally. A score of 89 also falls in that interval, so I'm going to make another tally. But 92 is going to fall in the upper interval, so I'm going to make a tally mark there. So pause this video and see if you can fill out the rest of your tally marks. Okay, hopefully you got the same tally marks as I did. When you get a group or a cluster of 5, usually you have 4 up and down, and then the slash counts as a 5, so it makes it easier to read. So there are 1 of these scores in the frequency 40 to 49. There are 2, 4, 4, 6, and 3. So let's just start there for now. We're going to make a frequency histogram based on these numbers over here. So let me zoom out just a little bit so I can read all of that at the same time. All right, so across the bottom is going to be where we put our intervals, and across the side is going to be where we put our frequencies. So we do need to label. So these are going to be our frequency. Across the bottom is going to be our interval. Hopefully you have a little bit more space than I do. I'm going to write it down here. Okay, interval. And my intervals start at 40. And so what is allowed in math that is not allowed in science is something called a line break or a graph break. And in this case, it would be a graph break. So because we're not going to start at 0, we're going to start where our first interval starts, which is at a 40. I'm going to have a little kind of like it looks like a lightning bolt or a little zigzag. And then that gives the reader an idea that nothing exists before this first interval. So I'm going to do every 2 bars. So from there to there, that's going to be 40 to 49. So if you can list that in there, 40 to 49. Next 2 bars are going to be 50 to 59. And this is kind of hard to write this tiny on my computer screen, so sorry if it's a little sloppy. 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, and then 90 to 99. Are going to be our intervals across the bottom. And up the side, the highest frequency we have is a 6. So we can really kind of spread out this if we want to. So I'm going to go every 3rd line. So 1, 2, 3, and on the 3rd line I'll make a 1. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is 4, 5, 6. Okay. All right, let's see if I can make this a little bit. See how big that's going to be. All right, so let's make our bars. So the first one only goes up to a frequency of 1. I'm going to fill that in. 50 to 59 goes up to 2. 60 to 69 is going to go all the way up to 4. So there's 4. Another one that's at 4. 80 to 89 goes up to 6. That's our highest frequency there, so that should be our highest bar. And then 90 to 99 comes back down to 3. So if you want to make these bars, if you want to shade them in, you can. I know how many of you love to doodle and whatnot, so if you want to shade it in, feel free to do that. Okay. So that is all fine and dandy, but now let's learn about a cumulative frequency histogram. So a cumulative frequency histogram is it accumulates as it goes. And so it's always going to span back to the very first interval. So the first interval was from 40 to 49, and there was only one score that fell in that interval. But if I count all of the scores from 40 to 59, that would be the 1 plus the 2, which makes a total of 3 scores fit within that interval. And if I go back to the beginning, I go 40 all the way up to 69, then that's going to be 1 plus 2 plus 4, which is going to bring me up to a total of 7. And then 40 to 79, so that's going to add another 4 onto it. 40 to 89, that's going to add 6 onto it, so that brings me up to 17, and I'm almost there. 40 to 99 should represent all of the data, and therefore should be a total of the 20 test scores that we originally were talking about. So you're in a cumulative frequency histogram, that last interval should have your total. Okay, well, when we go to draw one, again, on the bottom, we're going to have our cumulative interval. So I'm going to label this interval again. Interval. On the side, we're going to call this cumulative frequency. We're probably going to set it up very similar to the last one. We're going to have a little graph break. Every 2 bars is going to be one of our intervals, but now it goes from 40 to 49. 40 to 59, 40 to 69, 40 to 79, 40 to 89, and then our last one, 40 to 99. And up the side, we no longer can only go up to a 6, we have to go up to the maximum total 20 scores. So I'm going to make every line count as 1. So 1 and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Ha, it's perfect. Okay, let's make this a little bit thicker so I don't have to fill it in so much. All right, our first step, it only goes up to 1, so that's very short. Our next step goes up to 3. Then we go up to 7. Remember, this is the one that should kind of look like, well, not an even stair step climb, but it should kind of look like it's increasing and growing as it goes up. 40 to 89 goes up to 17. And then our last interval makes it go up to the maximum 20. So there's our stair stepper for a cumulative histogram. All right, so let's talk about like some of the same vocabulary words that we did the other day. So when we are dealing with histograms, we can still talk about percentiles just like we did in Box and Whiskers. A percentile is a score that tells us what percent of the population scored at or below that measure. So if I say, like eventually you guys are going to take the SAT, and if they say you scored in the 70th percentile, that does not mean you got a 70 on the test. That means you did at as good as or better than 70% of the people that took that same test. So if I say something like the 25th percentile, that is what we used to call our Q1, and it still is. Our first quartile is the 25th percentile. Q2 is the 50th percentile. That's the middle, the median. And Q3 is the 75th percentile. So that 75% of the data is at that point or below. So what does it mean to score at the 25th percentile? I'm just going to describe it once, and then it's literally verbatim for 50th and 75th. So you scored better than, or equal to 25%, my pen is not the greatest, 25% of students that took that test. test. There we go. All right. So let's practice another cumulative frequency histogram. It says use the data below in the following frequency table to complete the cumulative frequency. It's already given us our frequencies, so we just have to figure out our cumulative frequencies. So the first interval is still going to be 3, and then 3 plus 5 makes 8, and then 8 plus 6 is 14, and 14 plus 4 is 18, and then 18 and 2 make a total of 20, whatever this is representing, scores, I guess. Let's graph it, and then we'll answer the questions off to the side. So again, your intervals, your cumulative intervals are going to go across the bottom. Intervals, and across the side will be your cumulative frequencies. And this one actually starts at 1, so I'm going to leave like a little space in the graph. We only have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate intervals, so I'm going to make them a little bit wider. I think I'm going to go every 3 bars this time. So, actually, let's throw one more column onto our chart and come up with our cumulative intervals before we make our graph. So if the first one is 1 to 5, this one's still going to be 1 to 5. But then we're always going back to the beginning and then working our way up the interval. So this will be 1 to 10, this will be 1 to 15, that's a 15, 1 to 20, and then 1 to 25. So that's what we're going to be labeling and making our graph out of down here. So this will be 1 to 5, this will be 1 to 10, 1 to 15, 1 to 20. Oh my gosh, my pen is bothering me so much. And then 1 to 25. I need to get a new pen, I think. And then up the side, we're still counting to 20, so I'm going to do the same scale that I did last time. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. And let's make our bars. I'm going to go back to the red because it's already, I made it a little bit thicker already, so. 1 to 10 goes up to 8. 1 to 15 goes up to 14 is the next one. 18. And last but not least, our maximum, our highest, should be all the way up to 20. Okay, so let me switch back to blue, because that hopefully will show up nicely. So if the 25th percentile is where 1/4 of the grades would fall, and we have 20 total scores, okay, because our total maxed out at 20 here. I think the easiest way to think about that is how to break this down into 4 separate equal pieces. And the easiest way to do that, I think, is to divide by 2 and then divide by 2 again. So if I take 20 and I cut it in half, that will be where the 10th score is, will be the 50th percentile. So the 10th score, not a score of 10, but the 10th score. So if I go over to my picture and I find the 10th score, that hits this bar right here, that 1 to 15 bar. So that would mean the median is falling somewhere in from a score of 11 to 15. Well, if that's the middle, then the lower, so half of that would be the 5th score. So if I look at my graph and I go to 5 and I go across, it hits this bar. That's the interval 1 to 10, but that's our cumulative interval. A cumulative interval of 1 to 10 really is a score of 6 to 10. So that would be the interval where that 25th percentile would be. So if 5 is the 25th percentile, the 10th score is the 50th percentile, then the 15th score should be the 75th percentile. So if I go up to 15 and I go across, it hits this bar. 1 to 20. 1 to 20 corresponds to 16, a score of 16 to 20. All right. So here's another one that we can practice on. So the graph is already done for us. Since this is a cumulative frequency table, which is what it's labeled as, we know that there are 40 total people because that bar goes up to 40, so 40 total. So there are 40 total, then our median's going to be halfway, so that would be the 20th person. Then half of that would give me the first quartile, and obviously 3/4, so the 30th person will give me the third quartile. We're just going to have to think about what that interval is that represents it. So let's start with the median. That's the easiest one. The 20th person, here's 20. I go across, it hits this bar, and clearly it's going up by tens. So I'm going to say that that would be in the span of a score of 31 to 40, because it has to be above 30, and it stops at 40. Okay, now let's find our Q1, our first quartile, or 25th percentile here. That would be the 10th person that hits this bar. So that's going to be a score of 21 to 40. Oh, 21 to 30, sorry. And then last but not least, the 30th person would represent our upper quartile, which would be this one. Okay, one more practice here at the bottom. The diagram below shows a cumulative frequency histogram of students' test scores. Determine the total number of students in the class. So luckily this is a cumulative, so you can trust that last bar is the total, so there must be 30 total students in the class because that upper bar goes up to 30 people. How many students scored higher than a 70? Okay, so higher than a 70 would be these people, and these people all added up, because here is our bar that stops at 70. That bar stops at 10. If that bar stops at 10 and there are 30 people total in the class, then that must mean 20 people scored higher than a 70. Which 10-point interval contains the median? Okay, let me switch a different color maybe so that I can differentiate between that question and this question. So, which 10-point interval is the median? So if there are 30 people in the class, the median is going to be at the 15th person. That would be about right there. I'm going to go across. I hit this bar. But that's not a 10-point interval, that's like a 40-point interval. So because the one below it ends at 70, the 10-point interval would be from 71 to 80 is where the median score fell. And then which two intervals, 10-point intervals, contain the same frequency, meaning they're increasing at the same amount or held the same amount of people in them. And what I notice is this one is from 18 to 24, so that adds 6 on there. And this one is from 24 to 30, so that also adds 6 on there. So I'm going to say from a score of 81 to 90 and 91 to 100, both increased by 6. Scores on their tests. Okay. A little bit more practice here. All right, multiple choice. The test scores for 10 students. The test scores for 10 students in Mrs. Sampson's homeroom were the following. Which table would be inaccurate for this set of data? So this is just a regular frequency. It doesn't say the word cumulative. So it's kind of like going back to our tally marks that we were making. And hopefully you guys see that there are 2 in the 60s, there are, looks like none in the 70s, so this one and this one's out, okay, 81 through 89, I'm thinking it's gotta be this one. Perfect. Number 5. The table below shows a frequency histogram according to the table. How many runners are in their 40s? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, we kind of already said this. The mode is the interval that contains the greatest frequency, whichever one has the most. And the median is obviously the one that contains the middle. But what if I give you a table and I ask you these questions, but I don't ask you to graph it? Can you find these values without having to plot any points? So yes, the answer is yes, and I'm going to show you how to do that in your calculator. Just like we did the other day, even though we don't have a single number, what we're going to do is we're going to type only what I say the lower bound of the interval in L1, and then we're going to type our frequencies in L2, just like we did yesterday. So stat, edit. I already have these numbers typed in, so if you'd like to take a second and type those in, that'd be great. We're going to go to stat, we're going to arrow to calculate, we're going to still pick option 1, make sure that there's L2 in list in the frequency list, go down to calculate. Now, I cannot figure out an average when we're talking about an interval of scores. So X bar is sort of irrelevant here, but some of these numbers on the next page aren't irrelevant. So we can figure out our Q1, our median, and our Q3 by looking at these outputs. So Q1 says it's equal to 0. Now it's only saying 0 because those are the numbers that I typed into my calculator. So if it says Q1 equals 0, then that is indicating that 0 to 9 would be the interval where Q1 would fall. Q2 said a 10, or the median is a 10. That doesn't mean 10 is our answer. That means the interval 10 to 19 would be where the median falls. And then last but not least, Q3 said 20. So 20 to 29 would be where the third quartile falls. So you don't have to graph a histogram to find out where the quartiles are. All right, last few questions here for today. In the accompanying table, represent the number of cell phone minutes used by 23 users. Which one would be the median? So the median would be your middle user. So if there's 23 users, if we do 23 plus 1 divided by 2, we're looking for the 12th user, the 12th person. So this would be 1 plus 3 is 4, 4 plus 2 is 6, 6 plus 7. So it's going to be falling somewhere in that span. Just watch out for that one. It was going backwards. All right, the frequency table below shows the length of time that 30 students spent text messaging on a weekend. Which interval contains the first quartile? So I'm going to pause this. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to try this one. Remember to type the lower bound in L1, the upper bound in L2, and then run your regression and see where the first quartile falls. Okay, hopefully that gave you enough time to try it. Which interval contains the first quartile? Quartile says 51 is what it's spitting out, so that must tell me that the interval 51 to 60 is where that first quartile would fall. Number 9, what is the average? Now this is going back to what we did the other day. Notice this is scores, not intervals of scores. You would type this in L1. Type this in L2, and remember the average is the X bar. So why don't you practice what we did the other day? I'm going to pause this again. Okay, hopefully that gave you enough time to type that in. Run your one variable statistics, X bar, and came out to be 15. And then last but not least, I won't have you pause it this time. We'll just talk through it. So it's using the data in the accompanying table, which statement is true. So if you wanted to real quick, type L1, L2, and find the 3 things that they are discussing. These multiple choice are only worried about the mean, the median, and the mode of this data. So if you got a chance to do that, the mean comes out to be 11, the median comes out to be a 10, and the mode, because that's the one with the highest frequency, is a score or a measure of 10. So does the mean equal the median? No. Is the average greater than the median? That sounds like that might be our winner right there. Is the mean less than the mode? No. And is the median greater than the mode? No, those are the same. So obviously option 2 is the winner. All right, and that's the end of today's lesson. Please complete the homework.